We're going to walk you through the J&L oil separator installation for your Mazda CX-5. Included in the J&L kit is an oil separator, mounting bracket, 2 hoses, 2 hose clamps, and 2 mounting screws. The tools you're going to need for installation is a 10mm socket, ratchet, and extension, a torque wrench, various pliers, Phillips head screwdriver, 1/4-inch nut driver is helpful but not required, a couple flashlights, a magnetic pickup tool, also very helpful, some shop towels, and grease or light oil. Let's get started. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is disconnect the negative terminal on the battery. Being we're going to be unplugging some electrical connections, this is just a safe way to ensure that we don't get into any trouble. Just wiggle that off, and then I'm actually going to tuck it behind the battery so it can't come up and make connection. We're going to need to remove our engine cover. Just going to grab the front of it and pull up. And it's in 4 different grommets. It's here. Let's see, right on the back here. Set that to the side. Now, depending on how many miles are on your vehicle, you may see sand and dirt and all kinds of buildup here. What you're going to want to do is take, if you have an air compressor, that's the best thing to do, is to blow it all out. Maybe it'll make do with other things, like a can of compressed air, but you just want to try to get as much of that away. Now that we have that cleaned up, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the things we're going to need to disconnect to get this manifold off. So here on the side, there's this maybe fuel pressure sensor, and then there's these harness clips. So on the back side of them, you actually have to squeeze these, and the tabs will pop out. So on this side alone, there's 1, 2, 3. These 2 are pretty easy to get to. This one we'll probably have to get once we have the manifold pulled off a little bit, and we'll get access to it. Of course, you have the manifold bolts. So there's one here, there's one through the center, another up top, and then one on the side. So that's 2, that's 5 total up top, and then that one at the bottom. Then we have on the top here at the harnesses, you have, again, additional harness clips. There's one over here. And then we have a couple hoses at the close to the throttle body. None of these are coolant. They're all air, so they'll all break off dry. And we got to squeeze the clamps, slide that back, work the hoses out. We also have to remove the intake hose here. This will pull right out. And then we have 2 clamps. You can use a Phillips head screwdriver or a 10mm socket to loosen those up. Throttle body connection, which is just a squeeze and release. The map sensor here. And then this is what I also will show you at the bottom, which is like a harness routing block. It's like a plastic block like this stuff, which has a few of the harnesses running through it, and then a couple of those pins that I also showed you down bottom too. All right, so now we're actually under the vehicle. You don't need to get under. I removed the splash shield, but for the video's sake, I want to show you the things that you have to disconnect. Everything could be accessed from the top, but a lot of it you just can't see. So I figured this would be helpful. So first and foremost, there's a bolt that is bolting the intake manifold down to the engine block, which is right here. So that's another 10mm bolt. And then there are some additional electrical harness attachments. So let's see if I can get you and show you these. So there's this one here, and then this is where that map sensor is plugged in. So that harness is coming down to this section. So you'll need to disconnect that. And then if you can see where my finger is, there's another harness connection that has a big black plastic encasement for the harnesses, and that's attached there too. So you'll need to disconnect that. If you'd like, you can get from underneath the panel to remove. I mean, there's a bunch of bolts and clips and whatnot. I'm not sure if I would spend the time doing it. I've already removed this manifold once from the top completely, but I figured it would be easiest to show you from here to see exactly what you need to disconnect. So let's move back up top and get started. Starting with this plug, there's a yellow security tab on it. You have to pull the tab towards the front of the vehicle, and then you'll squeeze that tab to release that fitting. Again, I pulled this yellow tab out and then squeezed it down to release. Next, we're going to work on a few of these harnesses. You can use a pair of needle nose. Sometimes you can actually just use your fingers, but you can work on releasing a couple of these. And again, we have this other one. It's kind of in a pretty tight spot, but let's see if I can sneak it out and pop it right out. So that one on the back, you may want to wait until you have the manifold loosened up and have a little bit more space in there. But now just working to the driver's side, that pulled right out. You pull this hose out of the boot, And then we need to disconnect these lines and work that clamp up. Now these lines, a lot of times you need to grab them with a pair of pliers and just grab them and then twist them and then pull up on the line while you do that. Grab a different style pair of pliers here. And that's off, and then we just have this. That's that line. Also, we're going to want to remove this coolant overflow tank. You can get it out without it, but it buys you a lot of space, and this thing is very easy to get out of here. There is a wiring harness that's running through it, but it's not pinned or anything. It's literally, you could pull the tank right past it. So just want to be careful that you don't spill a bunch of it. You probably have a little coolant in this line, which I'm just going to sit on a paper towel for now. And then we're going to push this harness out of the bottom of it and pull up on the tank. Well, got that by that. And just watch your neck here. There is a little hose nipple out, and we don't want it to stress that and break anything. So you can just sit that off to the side somewhere safe where it will not spill. Then we have the map sensor plug. That's just a simple squeeze and remove. So that there. And then the throttle body one. Same thing. It's just got a little squeeze tab on it. I'm going to push it and pull that off. And that's this. You just squeeze that. You can also get your fingernail underneath the little tab too, or a little tiny screwdriver if that's real stiff and hard to do, but it's not the case on this one. And then that will give us access to our last little harness connection. I'm going to see if I can pop out. Like that. Now you can get your entire hand down here and get access to that bolt at the bottom. My finger is right on it. That's what we showed you from the bottom earlier. And then this harness right here was that last pin I pulled out. Need to remove our intake hose. These usually aren't very tight, but definitely go ahead and loosen that up a good ways. Should just give you as much space to remove this as you can. And we're just going to pull this off. Pull it off the throttle body, pull it off the air box. You can just set that to the side. You'll see there's a 10mm bolt here that's holding this bracket that holds the upper radiator hose to the throttle body. Let's start doing that. And once you break them free, usually just spin them out with your extension ratchet or all right, so the center bolt, you can't get your fingers on it. So if you got a magnet tool, you can grab the bolt out like that. I would recommend doing that versus you're going to jiggle this manifold all around and you don't drop the bolt and have to take the belly pan off to retrieve it. So use the magnet, spend a little time, save your bolt. Grab our last bolt out. This one's a little tighter to get out, try not to drop it. And that should be about it. Now there is a PCV line. It's a rubber line that's on the back side. That's actually what we're going to be replacing. But that line pulls off pretty easily off the PCV valve. There's no clamps or anything on it. So we're going to just work this out. You need to pull everything by the harnesses and hoses. Now you're going to look behind the manifold and you're going to see that PCV line. which again just pulls right off. And then make sure I just look back there and that you didn't forget to disconnect anything, especially if something's fighting you. There's a lot to get the manifold by up top here. And that pulls right out. So this is our PCV valve. See, there's actually oil in that. And then this is a great time to inspect your valves. You have full access to your intake valves and get an idea of what your carbon buildup is on the valves already. This vehicle's got 29,000 miles on it. And you can see some buildup on the stems there. It's difficult to get the light in here, so bear with me. Now we're going to connect our PCV line. So I'm going to put a little grease inside the hose, and that will help with sliding the hose onto the PCV valve. And then you want to also pre-install your hose clamp. So, and then this is going to route a very, very specific way. I'm going to route the hose through the fuel line and then back behind this. And then it's going to come up next to the radiator hose. And I'm going to pull this pretty far through because we have to feed it all the way through and then push it onto the PCV valve. Now the PCV valve rotates for adjustment, so make sure, I just pulled my clamp off, so make sure you leave the clamp on. And then you're going to push that onto the PCV valve. It should slide on pretty easy. Don't force it, it's plastic. And then we're going to tighten up this clamp, but keep in mind, this is clamping onto a plastic PCV. So it just needs to be tight enough to seal air. The factory doesn't even have a clamp. We're just doing this for reassurance that this seals. So I'm just going to tighten that up. And that is plenty. So that gets our PCV line. Now we need to prep our intake manifold for installation. We need to remove this PCV line. It should just pull right off. This is a line that connects to the PCV valve. We're not going to be reusing that. This is a great time to inspect your intake manifold gaskets, which are just O-rings. These are typically in pretty good shape. You can choose to replace these at the same time, but this is a very new vehicle, and we're going to reuse them. It is a good time to go ahead and clean them up, though. Just wipe the oil, any dirt off of them with a clean towel. And then we need to install our PCV line. As you see, it has a bend to it because this comes off of reels. We want to use the bend to our advantage. So our hose is going to be routing like this in the car, so we want to go ahead and slide this onto the intake. We're going to clamp this also. You can see there's not even really much of a hose barb on this. There's no pressure here. This is a naturally aspirated vehicle. But just go and work that on. And then you can slide your clamp on. And then we're going to go and tighten that up. And I'm going to do it facing the outside. So if I ever need to remove this, I can do it without removing the intake manifold. All right, so now we're going to work on reinstalling this into the vehicle. Just as we just did on the manifold, I'm also going to clean the outside of these ports. You'll notice that there's oil in there. Might be a little dirt. You just want to try to clean that up and clean your sealing surface. Okay, so now we're going to work our manifold into place. And we got to work it around throttle body here and then all of our connections. Pull up on the harness, get it around the manifold. So, and just want to double check what you're, see, so we got a line that's caught behind here. We need to get that out of the way. Your intake manifold line needs to come up front. And there we go, we're about where we need to be. There we go, okay. So don't force anything. There's a bunch of hoses, the harnesses you need to get by. You don't want to pinch anything. So just check before you stick bolts anywhere. Just check all your lines that you disconnected. I want to make sure that I'm not pinching my PCV. I'm not, because I can move it. Same thing on the front line. All right, we're going to go and rebolt it and start with the center bolt. This one could be a little tricky to line up because you can't feed it all the way in there by hand. There we go. I'm just going to run all these in by hand first, and then we'll tighten them up. So you want to do this center and out. So I'm going to go to the one to the left, run that all the way in, center to the right. This one could be a little tricky because you have this harness and this hose fighting against you, so make sure you start it by hand because you don't want to cross thread these. Do your outside ones. Now the torque spec on these bolts is only 13 foot-pounds. If you have a torque wrench, I would suggest using it. 13 foot-pounds is not very tight, so also just use your judgment. You remember when you took these off, these bolts were not very tight, very hard to get off. And you want to start again from the center and work your way out. Now don't forget about the bolt that you have at the bottom. That's that longer bolt. Go ahead and install that one too. This one can be installed after. It's not doesn't have anything to do with the manifold sealing, it's just a support. And you can screw that one in just about all by hand, and then just tighten that up. Now we just need to reconnect everything that we disconnected. I'm going to start over here on the passenger side with those harness attachments. I'm going to clip those in. I'm going to replug in my fuel rail sensor. Don't forget the security tab, press that in. We have to plug the harness back here and there. Remember, we have those lines, so we need to push those on and then push our clamps down. Get our clamp on there, and this one too. We need to grab our intake boot. Let's plug in our map sensor first. Have that harness retainment pin down here too. Get that. And then down in here, let's see if you can see this. This is our line to our intake. So we want to get this past the hard plastic harness block and to be able to refasten that. So that's plugged back in. And then that's going to go to our catch can. And we have our intake tube. So we need to work this on one side at a time. You'll see that there are slots in this for alignment. So we'll tighten those clamps up, reinstall our hose. Clamps again can also be used with a Phillips head screwdriver, which makes them pretty fast. You can also use a socket and just your fingers. They don't need to be crazy tight, just tight enough to seal air. Plug that connection back in. And then let's go ahead and reinstall our coolant tank. So I'm going to slide this down into place. Again, watch the nipple on your radiator tank, your radiator neck. That'll slide down into place, and then this has got tabs that it slides into. So pull the harness back up, and then just snap that down into place. Reinstall your cap. Right, we need to reinstall our 10mm bolt that's holding our upper radiator hose. So go ahead and line that up. It does have a locating pin, so you just want to make sure that you're around that. And we are. Okay, and then don't forget to plug your throttle body in. Now we're going to take our oil separator and bracket, and we're going to pre-install the bracket onto the oil separator. So just line up the two logos, then use the supplied screws to fasten. Now this is going to install. There is a existing 10mm nut on a stud that's not holding anything. You're going to loosen that up. It might be a little tight. You may want to support this bracket a little bit. There you go, that came right off. Take your oil separator and bracket. You're going to slide it over that stud and reinstall that nut. I'm not going to tighten that nut all the way down now. All right, now we need to make our hose connections. So we're going to use the same grease we used earlier. I'm going to put a little grease inside the hose. And then you're going to slide these dress-up caps over the end of the hoses. And then we're going to connect these to the oil separator. Just push that all the way up. Make sure you support the oil separator to not bend the bracket. All right, and I'm going to route this hose kind of back behind this throttle body. And then once we have that where we want it, we're going to tighten up that 10mm nut. So now our last step is to reinstall our engine cover. The engine cover is going to install on these ball studs and then the two grommets in the back. The easiest thing to do is just to line up your oil fill cap in the center and then just push them down. Average collection on an oil separator is typically about an ounce every 1,000 miles on most applications. Some can be worse than others, some could be better than others. This also can vary just vehicle to vehicle, same exact car. Check it at 1,000 miles. That'll give you an idea of how much oil your catch can is collecting, oil and contaminants. The can holds 3 ounces. If you can't remember to check it, it's a great thing to also maybe set in your phone or on your calendar on your computer, just a reoccurring event to check your oil separator once a month. Also to check this one, it could be a little tight to get your hand in here, but if you remove the screws from the bracket, that'll allow you to pivot the can out of there and get your full hand onto it. Make sure when you retighten the reservoir or tighten the reservoir the first time, treat it like an oil filter. Screw it to the O-ring and then give it about another 3/4 to 1 full turn. If you really crank it down on there, it'll be very difficult to remove later. So keep that in mind. You don't want it so tight that you can't get it off or so loose that it falls off. So to the O-ring, 3/4 to a full turn. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We thank you for watching.